Emily, how about you introduce yourself to us?
Hi, my name is Emily, and I am currently the publicist at Sydney Theatre Company. And I also freelance write. I'm a freelance journalist. Currently, I do music reviews typically for the Australian newspaper, and I used to work for them full time as a journalist a few years ago.
All right, cool. In your work as a publicist, I imagine you have to constantly interact with other members of your company just to achieve the most ideal outcome. Um, what are some of the group work techniques you think are most important for succeeding as a team?
Yeah, so at Sydney Theatre Company, so obviously, so how it works is I'm the publicist, I've got a PR manager, and it's just the two of us in the publicity team, but we're folded into the broader marketing team as well. So that's our team. And one of the great things about our team is that we have a weekly Monday morning meeting, which just kind of sets the tone for the week. We kind of go around for each section of the department, update each other on kind of maybe sales that have gone over the weekend, any social media updates that went, any publicity that came out over the weekend, and then kind of track forward to what's happening during that week and maybe address any challenges. If any of our team members need assistance with things, that's kind of addressed in those meetings. And I think that's a really good way of kind of staying on top of things. And then the other great thing that we do in the marketing team is just like, having regular kickoff meetings for all of our campaigns so that we really like focus in, cover off all of the like opportunities, all of the challenges. What's the budget we need to meet? How many tickets do we have to sell? What are the opportunities? And yeah, I guess
Hmm.
that's another really great thing that we do as a team.
Yeah. So you mentioned there that sort of you're with Sydney Theatre Company, there are constantly like new shows and productions being introduced. I imagine that's probably like a similar thing with the freelance writing at the Australian. You're probably getting hit up about new projects with some notice, but you probably have to be pretty agile in terms of how you respond to those. So in your work life, how do you go about like responding to a new project and developing work? Like, what's your so from like step one? What's your sort of process?
Well, I guess the good thing about, I'll focus on the STC work first. The good thing about the STC work is that we kind of, we've got a whole season of shows that is established well ahead of time. So we can kind of establish those publicity plans from the get go. And I think the good thing about that means that, from really early on in the piece, I just make sure that I first and foremost read the play. Because you want to know what you're talking about when you're pitching out to journalists, and you want to know what maybe, if there's any themes in the play that speak to something that's actually going on culturally or socially in Australia at the moment that we can, lean into. And then once the cast gets cast, researching all of their backgrounds, and once they start rehearsals, we create like a survey monkey for them to fill out about like maybe where they live. So if they happen to live in like the eastern suburbs, we'll make sure that we pitch them out to the Wentworth Courier or, something like that. So there's really good inbuilt kind of ways that I do my job just through like a publicity plan. And that is helped by the fact that, yeah, we season things out far in advance. And then in terms of how I approach my freelance work, yeah, it's a bit of both in terms of me being asked what I like to cover something, and then me pitching, like if there's an album, say, coming out that I would really like to review. Typically, I want to make sure that I listen to the album all the way through at least 3 times, kind of take notes throughout that process, and then sit down to kind of flesh it out.
Um, Sort of touching on that as well. I mean, there's obviously some sort of conventions in both your roles as a publicist and a journalist that you sort of have to, I guess, adhere to. But have there been any examples where you feel like you've sort of been able to innovate or kind of break away from those conventions with your work?
That you can't really take too many breaks away from form when you're a news journo. There was a time though where I got asked to cover the arias for news, and that was back in the day where my newspaper wasn't really using social media that much, but I pitched to them that I should do like karaoke on the red carpet with some of the stars as I was interviewing them. And that kind of really popped off on our social media, and it was really well received. So I was really proud of being able to pitch that. And I think that's really parlayed now into them using social media a lot more. They've now got a TikTok account as well, which is really good. So yeah, I think I would like to say in some way kind of helped them realize that there is maybe an audience on social media, and that they could kind of break away from their typical form of correspondence with people. And then in terms of the publicity, I would say that when I first started, we used to do essentially just like emailing and PDFs of media releases. But I've now started to build, I really wanted, having been a journalist, I really wanted I kind of knew what journalists would like to receive in terms of a media release. And so I pitched that instead we would maybe use the EDM format. We use Wordfly. and just kind of build in like the hyperlinks and have images on the media release so that they're a bit more eye grabbing and that kind of thing. And so I kind of incorporated that into how we do our media releases now, which I think is great. But again, with that, yeah, it's again kind of a pyramid thing. You don't want to bury the lead. You've just got to kind of go through the information and almost write it like a news story so that then journalists will pick it up and want to cover it because they feel like they're reading something they're used to.
Coming away from this conversation, I feel there is a great deal of knowledge from Emily's experience that I can apply to the group project moving forward. First among these is Emily's capacity to consider her task in a broader cultural and societal context, like when she contemplates how theatre shows could be relevant to current phenomenon occurring in the outside world. In tackling one of the big issues from the creative brief, I think it will be useful for our team to think outside the box and challenge ourselves to not consider the issue too narrowly. To do this, I think thorough research and exploration will need to be done in order to ensure that we are ideating solutions that are relevant to current phenomenon that may not be immediately obvious. The second lesson I've taken from this conversation was Emily's encouragement to experiment with forms whilst also acknowledging the strengths of existing conventions. From her work at the ARIAs, it's clear that the practices in fields like journalism can sometimes be adapted in new and engaging ways for different audiences. This experimental mindset is definitely something that will be of use to our group work, as a core part of the task involves speculating methods and technologies that may not even exist yet. Similarly, I think Emily's caution to also acknowledge and respect the strengths of existing mediums is equally compelling. In the speculative work we'll be doing, I believe groups could be in danger of breaking too far from reality with their ideas. This is why I think Emily's advice to respect the fundamentals whilst also injecting creativity into the mix is very wise. Lastly, on a practical level, I also think Emily's emphasis on communication and regular meetings within teamwork will be incredibly helpful to our group. As a team, our group has already established preferred channels of collaboration and conversation, as well as parameters for how tasks will be addressed. However, it is useful to know that these techniques are in line with those used by a seasoned professional.